Good evening, everybody. This is Phil. I'm doing a video on some poetry and some, I don't want to say legalese, but with some parameters describing venting and describing traumatic events and feeling no compunction to worry about repercussions. If there's a traumatic event, and let's say you're moving to another location and there's anonymity in the um, novel you want to write that's based on inspiration, and you have some angst, and you have some trauma there, and some, I don't want to say judgment, you have some reason to feel upset about what transpired, then is it okay for you to do a poem, a work, whether a novel, novella, or something like that, with your inspiration and even name somebody, but still keep it anonymous so that you are legally not responsible for anything? You're stating the facts, you're being truthful, but you're doing it in an artistic way. We have been so conditioned in our lifetime, especially in the last 10 years, for worrying about what we say because someone is going to say, your words are violence, therefore you're automatically wrong. And the realistic person with good judgment would say, no, artistic rendition trumps all, especially if there's some viewpoint about it which lets it appear true. And the reader can make up their own mind as they are reading, watching the art. So, in a free society where you're allowed to exchange ideas, or you're allowed to publish it, and people forget that you also have the right to turn it off. You have the right to walk away and not listen. And so, on media platforms or social media platforms, you have this tendency to always worry about the viewer and not worry about the artistic content. Mind you, I'm not speaking about just the subject matter, but the artistic rendition, the way it is written, the flowery language in which you describe something, whether true or not, whether the subject matter is germane or not, whether it's, you know, a pen, a magic marker, a highlighter, okay? The history of pens, it does not matter. That person has a right to write about it and verbalize it, with the exception of going out of their way and forcibly causing someone physical pain while they're doing that. Let's say if I walked up to a person and I hit him in the shoulder and I said, "You're going to listen to me." Okay. First of all, me touching him is an assault. Even my verbalizing that in most jurisdictions is considered assault. And that is not free speech. However, if I'm on the street corner of public opinion and I am saying the president is the most corrupt individual I've ever seen, because it looks that way and all the evidence proves it, then I cannot be censored for causing disorderly conduct just because people walking by don't like what I have to say. In the village square, in the public square, I'm allowed to say what I want, when I want, how I want, even at nighttime in the middle of the night. There's ordinances that curtail that, trying to be respectful of maybe people living in the neighborhood and wanting to rest and sleep. There are some ordinances that encroach on freedom of speech. Even if you don't want to hear it, you can walk away. You can vote with your feet, the saying is. There's all kinds of case law about freedom of speech, especially when you have Hustler magazine and whatever that guy's name was. I forgot. Larry Fink. No, not Larry Fink. I forget his name. Anyways, he won many court cases because he wanted to show sex. He wanted to show the woman's body up close in a sexual, provocative nature, which most of us young men at the time enjoyed. And he had a right to do that. Our parents had the right at the same time to ban them from the house because you cannot force anybody to look at or read anything they do not want to. Otherwise, it's propaganda, and you have a totalitarian government, whether it's sanctioned or whether it's a private citizen doing it and it's sanctioned by the government. You have tyranny regardless of who is doing it. But you can always walk away from something you don't want to read. You can always turn off your Twitter and turn off your Facebook and turn off your Truth Social and your MeWe and your TikTok. So they show all kinds of different, funny ways to describe politics nowadays and the characters in politics. And because those politicians are in the public eye, they lose their anonymity. You cannot dox. They say the liberals love saying that to Supreme Court justices. You cannot be in trouble for doxing a public figure per se. Now, if you're calling for violence and you're doing it, that shows a couple compounded different variations of freedom of speech, and it is not free. You can do it. You should not be executed for it. But if you're calling for violence against someone and you're, leaving directions to someone's house, then that is no longer just the village square being used for an opinion. It is being used to literally target someone for harassment, for physical abuse, for death. So there's different variations. So when people do poetry because they are pained with something and they are harmed by something that occurred, it is their basic reciting of the facts where they vent and they're allowed leeway to vent based on the truth or based on how they perceived it. Some people believe in many different things and it might not be true, but they still have a right to believe it and speak about it. Look at liberals. They speak about a lot of things. They say words themselves are violent just because I don't believe in transgenderism and, having to affix different words to them just because they think they are someone they are not. I'm not espousing violence towards transgender. I never have. I never will. However, being a pedophile in this day and age, when they're trying to twist it in what we can and cannot say, no one should deal with or allow in any village square harming children. So they're using the public square in essence to harm people for real and curtail free speech because we are not allowed to express our opinion about what is going on and helping save children that are being abused. Conversely, that is not really free speech. Being a liberal with that kind of mentality, censoring good people, trying to protect children from pedophiles, has nothing to do with being a transgendered person unless they are so warped that they are also pedophiles. And being a pedophile is what is a crime, not being transgender. And I'm not going to speak to people in all kinds of different flowery language that they tell me now I have to address them as. I'm not going to do it. He, him, Jesus Christ. Let's speak about him more often. So, anyways, a couple, maybe I want to say more than a couple, 15 years ago, one job I worked at when I was publishing my first book was working with high pressure water wands and all the equipment that comes with it that makes a steel wand that looks like a rifle hooked up to hoses shoot out water nearly, I forgot what it is, depending on the type of wand, it could be 35,000 psi or 40,000 psi. And you would have to hold this wand like a shotgun while you're directing the water stream at a piece of metal. It's used mostly for metal to cut steel so that what's contained inside that metal container, whether it's an oil tanker outside, whether it's a ship hull or have you, excuse me, nothing would ignite and catch fire or explode because it's water being used to cut through the steel, and you'd have to hold it steady and go across slowly. So I would deliver that, and I was being harassed at work by one step-in manager, and her mentality was, no, you're going to listen to me and don't call the mechanic anymore when you have a question. And I'm 300, 500, 600 miles away from this location where I just loaded up these very big, thick metal and plastic wrapped hoses and all the equipment. And I'm trailing this big high pressure water pump. And I got a dually pickup truck, and I got all the equipment in the back of the pickup truck carrying this trailer, which is a high pressure water pump on a big steel platform all the way down the highway, hundreds of miles away. And I had a simple question. I'm calling the back kind of like garage and asking the mechanic who gave me the orders of what I have to do and where I deliver it, who signs for what. And I get my directions. What do I do in this case when this thing breaks or what have you? Whatever technical question I had, I'd ask them. And this lady was very rude. She was very sniping, where she would purposely, attack me inside verbally, inside of work when I return and over the phone and say, you don't call them anymore. You call me first, and then I'll ask him. I'm like, oh, he's the mechanic. He can tell me directly, and no one has any issues if it's fixed right there and then. I mean, of course, me and him are going to let you know if we can't solve something, was my mentality. Had nothing to do with her being a female, other than as a female, she was acting irrational. She was acting prejudice. She was acting anti-male. She was acting like she was becoming the manager and trying to, take some scalps while she's the acting manager. I was like, okay, well, I don't see this job lasting much longer than it has, 6 months since they put her in charge as the acting manager. So we would have classes at our work in the back for oncoming customers. I want to say companies that use our product. And the companies would come in, and they're our customers, and we would teach them how to use the water wand. Personally, I didn't like the water wand, so I stayed away from it as much as I could, even a big guy like me. And we did one class, and there was one individual who saw what we explained, what we taught, and he wanted to come up and use the water wand, and we had it leaning inside a fence. And so all he had to do was let go of the valve if the pressure got too high, and he's shaking, big muscular guy. And he was doing okay there for a couple of minutes, and then his supervisor walked up behind him, and he tried to manhandle it coming out of the fence and losing control. and he spun around and he severely injured his supervisor. So me and the mechanic did first aid. I'm holding the guy's top of his leg. He's cut through completely through the leg. There's nothing but bone there, about this thick. And the paramedics came. One of those lifesaver crews coming with the helicopter came in, airlifted him out. And then after that, I was harassed even more by this lady over the next weeks or so. I had to give a statement initially, and everybody that was there saw it, and it was them not listening to us. Let go of the trigger, and the water would dump out a bigger valve. There would be no issues. All the pressure going through one opening this small would dump the water out as the hose is still flushing water, and there's no PSI, and he wanted to cut his supervisor in half. So this acting manager, harassed me for the next month or two, and I was like, yeah, okay, this lady cussed me out one last time, and I walked off the job. And I tried to get unemployment insurance after that. And they said, because I walked off the job, and it's not a right to work state where the agreement is you can leave anytime, not be penalized. New Jersey State thought, okay, that's not constructive firing. You basically quit. It's like, no, I was quit because I was harassed by a female. While I'm speaking to a female New Jersey State Economic or Employment Commission representative. So I received no benefits whatsoever. I had no opportunity to get benefits. I was like, yeah. Okay, so I tried to track down the victim of the injury. And I remember throughout that, post incident, they weren't giving us any information about how the victim was. And, our hands were still bloody at the time. I mean that figuratively, the next month or two. And I worried about him, and I hope that he's doing well. And I remember the supervisor looked up at me, and he was, writhing in pain, cut across his waist. And never forget, he said, my God, did it get my balls? I wanted kids. I wanted more kids. I wanted more kids. Did it get me there? Did it get me there? Did it get my balls? I was like, man, I'm just trying to hold your leg on, thinking to myself. There were angels there too. A guy next door in the next freight yard or whatever you want to call it, industrial yard, jumped the fence. He was a EMT that would moonlight as an EMT, and he was directing everybody what to do. While I'm sitting here holding the leg on, I know to hold his freaking leg on so he doesn't bleed out. The upper part of his leg, looking down, and nothing but bone and the whole serration that went through his leg and across his hip, the front of his hip and across his leg. And I'm like, man, I'm mad. I'm mad because in this world of people saying they're so violated, here we have a woman with insane freaking demeanor and morals and ineptitude. She wasn't necessarily inept in the job she was doing before being the manager's secretary, but she just wanted to prove something. And she was one of those frosted 1980s haircut women that always try to look like she's decked out, going to a hoochie bar with her girlfriends and wanted to look like, she's a creme de la creme, big chunky girl. I'm like, anyways, it gave me perspective even more so about just how people react in trauma related traumatic situations and how it could go from bad to worse and how people handle it. So venting over the next 4 years, a smaller rhyme came to me. And I wanted to do poetry in between my doodling, my professional writing, and I wanted to do poetry at vent because at the time when I was destitute and didn't have a steady job, there was no health care I could go to vent, seeing that occur right in front of me. I remember the blast of the wand too. I was about 15 feet away. I was further than that. I was about 15 to 25 yards away. Knocked my hat off. It came around when it cut through the supervisor, and the water steam blast hit my face. I was like, "Oh my god!" I felt like I was shot, and just little things like that. How does one, work with themselves to recover, especially when there's no one else there to vent to about something simple like that? So in this day and age, with a lot of trauma going on, someone would say, "Well, that's not the biggest thing. There's people dying all over the place." Well, of course. That's why you have the freedom to be an artist and do poetry and write your feelings down, or write a novel, write an autobiography, write about that one instant if you want, and do a book about it, make it a movie. You have a right to. And that's part of the reason why we are a free country, to express ourselves the way we see fit. Am I harming that lady? No. Her name is Kim, and she has anonymity. I can equally ask, when I was in New Jersey there, the next 4 years, 3 or 4 years, did she ever apologize to me? No. Will she? Probably not. I don't need one, actually. But then when I was looking for that next job, that's what I thought she should do, is apologize. So, getting over trauma, we're allowed to express ourselves freely. And someone can sue someone all they want. Doesn't matter if it's the truth, one, and two, we have a right to express the truth in any forum. Any forum we're allowed. If it's a private domain, that's something different. But on an open social network, which is supposed to be considered the public and village square, that's where freedom exists most of all, and people of all stripes should want to protect that. So I've posted this sometimes at Facebook over the years, just like posting stuff and giving a little taste of the disappeared and the poetry in any event. And it's how I feel. It's called Kim. Kim. Oh, so beautiful. Kim as fat as a bear, large and not slim. Oh, Kim. Oh, Kim, a bulbous, large ass, big as a blimp, and quite rotund lass. Excuse me. Oh, so blonde and so stupid with fake grease hair. You never met Cupid. Oh, no life, a trifle bad actor. No men but I to corral, owning stock in Max Factor. Oh, lovely Kim, employees to trim. Did you see the waterfalls red and the dismembered limbs grim? I, pardon me. I was fired, you won. Two men in a vortex, and spin cycle spun. Accusatory names and hex, as you spent your power on fit to rule. Livelihood done. A man cut in half, I saved as we soured. You sat on a perch to the very last hour. O Kim, O Kim. Well, that was one of the most favorite healthy poems I have ever written before. And to me, it was healing. And if that lady would ever like to contact me and apologize without preconditions, saying it was just a job, without preconditions and saying, oh, I just, was put in a position to do that. No, the trauma occurred and it was compounded by firing people and forcing them off the job by harassing them. It just proved to me it doesn't matter what socioeconomic class you are, you can still break the law and be discriminatory and hateful and miserable and live your life in a negative light. So, anyways, that's Kim. And it is a beautiful looking poem on paper. And I hope it comes out pretty good in The Disappeared when I assemble everything together with the novellas. And it's just a little tidbit, it's a little thing going on with everyday occurrences where we have the freedom to express ourselves. And hopefully it's in a nice artistic way so more people can look at that. And, the saying honey instead of vinegar or honey instead of salt, and more people read and they say, wow, that was kind of deep. Well, behind being deep, behind every piece of poetry and novella and novel and newspaper article, there's the truth, the inspiration, and the truth. So, anyways, guys, thank you very much, and I appreciate your help. Have a great day and be safe this weekend. It's still cold out there. Thank you.